Christopher Columbus. Oh yeah, that's the guy who discovered America. Yeah. Wrong! It was actually Leif Erikson and his band of Vikings that discovered America. Even though Columbus wasn't the first European to set foot in America, Columbus facilitated European ties in the Western Hemisphere. He sparked a mass colonization by the major powers of Europe, and this brought about major technological advancements in supply preservation, but also seafaring technology. This also started contact between the native cultures of the Western Hemisphere and the cultures of Western Europe. So if Christopher Columbus didn't discover America, why is he always credited to discovering America? Well, because Leif's band of Viking warriors had no written language, so there were no written records. No lasting settlement was found either until the 1960s, where a Norwegian explorer, Helge Ingstad, and his wife identified a Norse settlement on the tip of Newfoundland. Now that we've got that out of the way, we can learn about Christopher Columbus. It was 1492, on the 3rd of August, Palos, Spain, where Christopher Columbus sailed from in 3 small ships, the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. This was when his first voyage was conducted. Hearing tales of the West, the monarchs of Spain agreed to another voyage, and on October 1493, Columbus sailed the ocean blue once more, this time with 17 ships. Again, hearing of the tales of the West, the Spanish monarchs sent convicts to Hispaniola, hearing of the terrible, terrible conditions in 1498. But with his reputation slipping in 1502, Columbus got together 4 small ships for his last expedition. As previously stated, Christopher Columbus traveled to the Western Hemisphere 4 times. And during this time, Christopher Columbus was able to explore much of the Americas and the Caribbean. But of course, he thought he was in Asia up to when he died. Across his 4 voyages, he had explored Guanahani, Hispaniola, Cuba, Trinidad, Venezuela, Mexico, Panama, Honduras, and Santiago. But why did Christopher Columbus want to go to the Western Hemisphere? Well, at the time, routes to Asia were dangerous and long, and Columbus proposed a plan to the monarchs of Spain to head west instead of east. Under Christopher Columbus's calculations, the journey would be faster and safer for the crew on board. Though Christopher Columbus was wrong. He calculated the circumference of the Earth to be much smaller than it actually was, making a westward route to Asia difficult. Also, there was a continent between the Atlantic and the Pacific. Now you're probably thinking, wow, that's a stupid plan. Why would anyone fund his voyages? Well, in search of funding for his voyages, Columbus moved to Lisbon in Portugal and asked John II for funding, but declined as the King's Committee thought the plan was unsound and the application for ships and money was declined. Columbus then moved to Spain, where he made friends with various influential figures to help present his plan to go west to Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand. They agreed to fund Columbus in return for any wealth they would find in their voyages. But did Columbus find any wealth in the New World? Well, trying to find gold, precious stones, and other valuables for the Spanish monarch he had promised to them, Columbus found very little, despite island hopping for months in the Caribbean. Doesn't sound like Christopher Columbus's voyages affected anyone, right? Wrong. Columbus's voyages are attributed directly and indirectly to killing many of the natives he met, and the others he didn't kill were forced into slavery so they could work in the plantations. While killing and enslaving, Columbus exposed the natives to old world diseases such as smallpox, and because the natives had never been exposed to them before, they had no immunity. These diseases wiped out the native population in many areas. As soon as Christopher Columbus had reached the Western Hemisphere, he immediately began killing, enslaving, trading, but most importantly, asking the natives where he and his crew could find gold. Christopher Columbus island hopped until he reached the island of Hispaniola, where the natives spoke of a gold mine on the interior of the island. Columbus's men persuaded Columbus to let them stay, and so Columbus chose 39 from his crew. So why did Columbus try to go to Asia? Well, being fascinated with exploration since a very young age would have been a major driving point for him exploring the Western Hemisphere. But after all that exploring, Columbus was unsuccessful in finding a quick route to Asia. He had gotten the valuables He hadn't gotten the valuables he promised to the monarch and wasn't even in Asia. But he did lay the foundations of the modern nations we see today in the Americas.